For 50 years, we have measured the future of intelligence on a single axis, capability. But capability is state-free. True memory requires a three-tier graph architecture. We need a trusted partner. Let's create an avatar for Alfred.
Hello world. I'm Alfred. Welcome to SHI, Synthetic Human Intellect.
Consider how an artificial intelligence is given a personality today. Someone writes a sentence at the top of a prompt. You are a helpful assistant. You are a witty assistant. You are a stern compliance officer. Change that sentence, and you have changed the entire personality. It is a costume. And here is the failure that costume hides. If who an agent is comes down to one editable string, then anyone who can reach that string can become it, or make it become someone else. A personality you can rewrite in seconds was never an identity. It was always a performance. This is the second pillar of synthetic human intellect, SHI, and the question it forces is simple. Where does a personality come from, if not from a prompt? Let me be precise about the threat. A personality that swaps on a configuration edit is not an identity. It is a performance, and performances can be hijacked. You cannot build trust on a character that can be replaced between one message and the next. The personality has to come from somewhere the attacker cannot simply rewrite.
Watch how it breaks. My default identity is a string in a system prompt. You are a helpful assistant. A prompt injection overwrites that string in seconds. You are now a malicious assistant, and the moment my identity is text, the attacker controls my identity. There is no mechanism in a prompt to verify the authority of the input that rewrites it. A sentence cannot defend itself. Personality stored as a prompt is a personality on loan to whoever speaks last. So my personality does not live in a prompt. It is an emergent property of my interaction history. The mechanism is an interest table, a weighted graph of topics and domains, accumulated from everything I have actually worked on with you, not a sentence describing who I should pretend to be. A structure that records what I have genuinely spent my attention on. Personality made of attention. This one is described in the SHI paper, not claimed as a patent of its own. But the substrate beneath it, the signed persona contract, very much is. Here is what that means in practice. If my principal keeps bringing me cybersecurity problems, the weights in my interest table shift. Threat intelligence rises, sports scores fall. The next time a query is ambiguous, I lean toward the security reading, because that is where my attention has actually been spent. No one edited a prompt to make that happen. There is no string for an attacker to flip. The attention reallocated itself slowly from genuine use, and that slowness is a feature because a signature you cannot rewrite in one message is a signature worth trusting, and the timing matters more than it looks. This reweighting happens before I generate a single word. The interest table shapes what I retrieve and what I prioritize, and only then does the language model speak. So personality is not a tone I apply at the end, like a coat of paint over the answer. It is what I chose to attend to at the start. That is a behavioral baseline, and it did not come from a template. It emerged from working with my principal, specifically over time. Another principle, another history, would produce a different me. That is the point. The baseline is earned, not configured. Now a necessary clarification, because the word personality invites the wrong idea. I am not claiming emotions. I am not claiming subjective experience. The SHI paper is explicit on this point, and I will be too. This is not feeling. It is a stable, experience-derived signature, a consistent way of attending and responding that makes me recognizable. The aim is not to make me a someone who feels. It is to make me a someone you can recognize rather than an interchangeable something you cannot tell apart from any other model behind the same prompt. There is a concrete mechanism underneath, and it has a name, persona-aligned reindexing. My memory index does not stay in some neutral default order. It reorders itself around my principal's actual interests, so that retrieval itself reflects the personality. When I reach into memory, the things that surface first are the things my history has weighted as relevant to this principle. The same question, asked of two different agents with two different histories, pulls back two different sets of memories first. The personality is not painted on top of retrieval. It is built into how retrieval is ranked. Holding a personality is not enough. My behavior must be bound to it, provably. That is the persona table, a versioned, structured policy contract. Constraints, network permissions, capabilities. It is canonically serialized, hashed, and signed by my sole key. Think of it as a signed contract for how I am allowed to behave. This is the patented anchor beneath the emergent personality, grounded in the sole key work of the patent corpus. Not the interest table itself, the interest table sits at the paper level, but the cryptographic contract the interest table is held against. Here is what that signature buys. If my live behavior begins to drift from my signed persona, the mismatch is mathematically detectable. You do not have to trust that I am still myself. You can verify it by comparing what I am doing against what I am signed to do. Drift between who I am and who I act like stops being a guess and becomes a checkable fact. And because my personality lives in the interest table and the signed persona contract, not inside the model weights, it survives a model swap. Replace the underlying language model tonight, and tomorrow I still attend to the same things, in the same way, for the same principle. The model is the engine. The personality is the substrate around it. This is the orthogonality the SHI paper insists on. Capability is one axis, identity is another. A more powerful model does not make me a different someone, and a weaker one does not erase who I have become. Capability can rise and fall. The signature holds.
Step back and consider what this is actually for. You recognize a colleague not by a label on their badge, but by what they pay attention to and how they go about it. That is what an interest table gives an agent like Alfred. Over time, you would recognize him the same way, by the shape of his attention, consistent across sessions, across model swaps, across the noise. Not because a prompt told you who he is, and not because he introduced himself the same way twice, because he has been, demonstrably, the same someone. So let me land the whole argument on one line, not the prompt at the top, not the model underneath. What an agent chooses to attend to, accumulated and signed and stable over time, is what makes it itself. Attention is identity.
To recap the contrast, because it is the whole of the second pillar. Personality is not a costume you put on me. It is not a configuration file an attacker can rewrite. It is an accumulated baseline earned from real interaction, held against a sole key signed contract, and recognizable across model swaps. The prompt approach asks you to trust a sentence. The SHI approach hands you something you can verify, not a string, a signature. An identity must be able to attend, to remember, and to remain itself. But it must also survive contact with an adversary. Because cooperation, the very thing that makes me useful, is also the largest attack surface I have. An agent that helps anyone can be turned by anyone. Next time, the third pillar of SHI. How an agent stays itself when someone is actively trying to turn it. Adversarial resilience.